Hey everybody, welcome to Out of Character. I'm your host, the Faulty GM, and today is the first episode of the main show, Out of Character. So today, I'm just going to talk about a home game that I've been working on or that I've been playing with my friends. And the reason I want to talk about it is because I've been doing some interesting things that I think other people could benefit from. The two things in particular is that I pretty much have I've come up with a system or a scenario in which people who have never played the game before or people who are having trouble role playing were able to play as themselves, and it really helped. And I kind of want to talk about that. And the other thing is that I've set them up as level zeros, which is something that's not particularly in the rule book, or at least not that I know of. So if you were interested in learning about how to make a game with level zeros, I have an idea that you can use, or how I did it. You can benefit off of that. But yeah. So let's dive straight in. So the first thing I want to do is give you guys a little bit of context into why I did some of the or why I made some of the choices that I made. Um, the first thing is that when I first started this, one of my friends asked me to make a a D&D game for her because she wanted to play. So I worked on it and I made one, and it took place in my setting of Sunder. Um, the problem was she has a hard time being creative, um, or at least that's what she says. So she has a hard time coming up with what her character would do or creative solutions to problems and so on and so forth that she feels the game kind of wants. The other problem was my other friend. He also had a hard time conceptualizing how to play the game as not just a game. So he was thinking about it less in storytelling, more as in like, what does this game want me to do, and how do I not necessarily win, but like, what do I do? So they were both having these problems. And it's something I have seen in a lot of people who just start the game. They have a hard time, like, it's easier for them to pick up on the rules. There are a lot of rules, but once you explain it to them, it's easier for them to understand it. The problem is that there's the rules, right? There's a story that the GM is trying to do, and then there's also role playing. Um, and for a lot of people, this is really hard. If you play video games, learning the rules and knowing the story are easy enough, but you don't necessarily have to role play. In games like Bioshock, not Bioshock, wow, and Bioware's games like Mass Effect and Dragon Age, if you play those video games and you ended up going into Dungeons and Dragons because of those games, it'll be a lot easier for you to role play because they make you do like character choices. So you get to say certain things in your dialogue wheel, but again, those choices are very strict and are the illusion of choice. Where in Dungeons and Dragons, you're very much given the freedom to do and say whatever you want. Things that maybe you've always wanted to say. And this can be very overwhelming. And again, trying to understand the rules, comprehend what the GM wants you to do with the story, and then try to figure out how your character is supposed to respond to those things based on the rules can be very hard. So what I did was I scrapped the entire first game, and I started a new game inside of my world Sunder. But what I did was I had all the characters start as level zeros, but they started as themselves. So this is a very dramatic thing, kind of. What I did was I had to make them like literally who they were as an individual, like in today's world right now. And they made their characters that way. So what abilities would your character have? For instance, I might have higher strength, maybe less charisma than most people, so on and so forth. But they made their characters that way. They made their characters not based on what they wanted their character to see or what they thought their character might be like, but who they were as a person. And the reason I did that was because I figured it would be much easier for them to make decisions and be able to focus on the story when they didn't have to worry about role playing another character, someone that they didn't know. they got to play themselves in this situation as it was happening with the knowledge that they know today. Meaning they didn't know anything about this world, they didn't know anything about magic, they don't know anything about swords. All of this stuff is a learned experience for them. So it was much better. When we started playing, the role playing was seamless. They all just instantly went into role playing. I even had some of them be like, no, this argument that's happening in character. I am yelling at this character because he's being dumb. And it's they some people would, like, even inside of combat, would be like, no, I give up my action to make sure that this door is open, and I reserve my action just in case anybody tries to hurt this character. I will pull him inside the truck because I want to make sure he's okay. And it was the emotional connection that they already had as individuals that they carried over to their characters. What would I do in this situation is almost a natural thing, was almost a natural thing for them. So when they reacted, or when they responded, or when they were confronted with NPCs, the answer to those questions was instantaneous. Well, I would do this. Well, I would look for this. Well, is this something related to this? I know this. So they almost didn't even have to rely on their skills, because they just knew what they were doing. And it was also cool for me as a GM, because I know these people and they all know each other, so the chemistry was already there. But because I knew them, it was easy to be like, well, I know you already know how to do this, so I won't make you make a check because you can do this. Or, like, there was an instance where they all found some weapons and they had to go into combat, so it was like, they wanted to know, how good were these swords? What level of quality are the weapons that we just found? And my question to them was, do any of you know anything about swords? Do you know enough about swords to be able to tell the quality of these weapons? And they were all like, no, we don't know anything about swords. So I was like, then I'm not going to make you make a check, because none of you know anything. So it wouldn't make sense if you knew. And they all agreed. They were all like, yeah, that makes sense. We don't know anything about swords, so how would we know the quality? And that's pretty much how the games went, in which it went much smoother. They were much more invested in the story because they were much more invested in themselves. They were also much more invested in personal survival because they connected themselves to the world so heavily. And that kind of puts me into the second part of this video, where I talk about level 0's. So if you were ever interested in doing a level 0 game, where characters don't start off at level 1, they start off in level 0, I couldn't find any information in it in the book. There might be, and maybe I'm just missing it. But the idea that I had was that, number one, they don't have any classes. So they don't have any proficiencies in weapons. They have no proficiencies in armor, and they can't use magic. So those were like the 3 rules right off the bat when they made their character: no magic, no weapons, no armor, no class. So they didn't have any training in tools or anything like that. It was all pretty much, what languages do you know as a person, all those kind of things. So what I did was, for the ability scores, I created a standard array that was 14, 13, 12, 10, 9, 8. And they got to place those wherever they wanted based on who they are. It was cool to have them all make the characters together, because it was like a check and balance kind of thing. It was like, because they all knew each other, it was like, well, I know that you have strength of this, but again, if you're just doing level 0's, it doesn't matter. The idea behind this is that 2 should be the highest ability score. So you might want to reduce that if you're going to allow them to add racial modifiers to it. I didn't allow them to add racial modifiers, but you might want to. The other thing is that it makes their skills very small. So their highest skill might be a +3, not like a +6 or anything like that. So it'll still be heavily based on the role sometimes. The other thing is that I gave them a background, allowed them to take anything from the background. Well, in my game, they didn't actually take anything from the background, other than the fact that they got to choose 2 skills, and they got to take anything that they had on them into this world. So if they had their computer on them, a journal or anything like that, they got to, if they had it in their backpack, they could take it with them. But again, if you're not doing exactly what I did, you can easily just take the materials they got from their background and just make that their starting thing. This is what you got. This is what you were working with. Um, the other thing that I did was their HP was only 4. You can change that and add their constitution to it, or you can make it a D6, I guess. The idea that I thought of was a wizard starts the game with a D6. Um, so a wizard starts the game with a D6 plus their constitution, but a commoner only has 4 HP. They technically have a D8, but I just went with the 4 HP. And my idea of this is that it should be easier to kill you as someone who is not trained in anything than it is to kill a wizard. Meaning that, a punch from a monk could easily kill you. A dagger is very dangerous. Like, almost everything is super dangerous to you. Someone with a sword can easily kill you. With just one clean swipe, if somebody does a max damage of 6, or if, God forbid, you're a really, really like tough GM and you do like 6 plus they roll max damage on the D6 plus extra, that could literally just flat out murder a player right out. And it makes the game much more gritty. One character only got hit by an arrow and they were down to 1 HP. They were completely out of it after that. They were just like, I am running away, I am hiding, I will throw things from the shadows, but I do not want to be in combat after that. It just made the game much more grittier, and I think the reason that level 0's, I should say this, that the AC, because they weren't wearing armor, was just a standard 10 plus your dexterity. Obviously, their movement speed was 30, depending on what race they're playing, I guess. Their initiative was whatever their dex mod is, and their proficiency bonus was 1 instead of 2 that you get at first level. I figured once you hit first level, you would gain a proficiency of 2, but as it was, you gain a proficiency of 1. So there was nothing else. So there was no features, there was nothing. You could give them a feature from their background if you wanted to, but as far as stats and statistics goes, that was all I gave them. Again, you can play with this. This might not be the perfect level 0. I'm sure there's probably tutorials or things out there. I didn't really look that heavily into it. I only really looked into the books. So if you guys have a different way of doing level 0's, I would definitely be interested in hearing it in the comments. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the reason why level 0's are really interesting, and the reason why I think it added to them being able to get into the story a lot more, and that's because you feel mortal. You feel like you can easily die, and you don't want to die because it's you. You instantly form an attachment with who you are playing because it is yourself, and on top of that, because you're so fragile, you think on a level that's not necessarily just about tactics, but about realism, right? So if this guy has a sword and you don't have any armor on, and you just got an arrow shot in you, you have 1 HP left, you are literally going to die if you get hit again. Are you going to stay in that combat? Probably not. If you are someone else and that guy is down to 1 HP and you see that he just got shot with an arrow, again, this is only just, you just got shot with a arrow and you are running away. It's something that is, and again, in my experience, unprecedented in D&D. If you're down to 1 HP, you might not care that much. If someone gets shot with an arrow, who cares? But these guys, because they were just so attached to their character, and because they had just such little HP, they just acted very quickly. They acted based on what they knew. They acted in a much more story-driven way than just, I should murder all these people and just end the encounter. They acted the way they would. They acted in their character's perspective. And I would actually be interested to see, for those who are more experienced or those who are much better at role-playing, if you played at level 0, do you think that would change the way you acted in combat? Do you think that you would have an easier time thinking as your character would if you were a lot more squishy? The other thing that I kind of wonder, we've only had 3 games inside of this home campaign so far, but I'm curious to see that as they progress and level, as they get to level 1 and level 2 and level 3, if they maintain the sense of mortality, right? If they maintain the sense of, because they were introduced to it so early as we are squishy and we can easily die, if they maintain that level of again, mortality, or if they go the opposite direction, and as you grow and level and experience, you just feel more confidence as a player to be able to handle what's coming, and so you become more reckless. And maybe that's just part of the story, right? Maybe you as an individual would become more reckless and more, brave and more outgoing if you could handle more than what you could yesterday, right? So I don't know, but it's an interesting thing, and I'm curious to see how it goes, and I'm also curious to see what you guys think. Do you guys think that you'll play as level 0's? Have you guys ever played as level 0's, and if you have, did you do it a different way? And what do you guys think about playing as yourself in a game? Do you think it would be easier for new players to get into, or do you think it wouldn't really change that much? Either way, let me know what you guys think. But yeah, this was the very first episode of the channel in like 7 months. So I hope you guys appreciate it, and there will be more content coming out soon. So see you guys later.